Alright, good afternoon, Earth. This is Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting oak tree in a flower vase. Alright, today is furthering the limbs. Alright, so what we're going to do next is drop in a very deep burnt sienna and violet linseed liquid and mineral spirits mixture in order to make the little limbs limmier, and also to push the foliage into the back of the tree by redoing the foreground limbs thickly. Then the back of the tree will be full, and then we can start fleshing out the foreground limbs of the tree again, and then we'll start having a pretty solid looking oak tree. And then I can really start detailing it. So, let's get that going.
It's that simple. So we pass on the trauma inevitably. So even parents who abuse their kids, it didn't begin with them. In fact, probably they love their kids. They're just behaving in ways that are acting out their own dynamics, which stems to their own childhoods, which understanding ought to remove any sense of blame from the conversation. There's no blame here, we're just pointing out how things are. Everybody actually does their best, you know, everybody's always doing their best. That just happened to be their best. But what their best is, I know that my wife and I, our best was constrained by the trauma that we both experienced as kids. And those parents that are fortunate enough to work it out before they have kids or while the kids are young, well, they won't pass it on so much. And those of us that didn't figure this out till later, we do pass it on. And it's also intergenerational in the physiological sense. I'm not going to go much into this, but the whole idea of epigenetics, which means that genes are turned on and off by the environment, so that, for example, the grandchildren of Holocaust survivors will still have elevated stress hormone levels because of certain biological changes that are not genetic, but they're passed on from one generation to the next. So both psychologically and biologically, trauma is passed on. This is why, but if we get, unless we intervene, unless we actually get it, unless we stop it, and you know, maybe this is the last comment before the break, one therapist once said to me that if your parents gave you this much crap, and you give your kids only this much, you're doing a good job. You know? I'll see you in 15 minutes, okay? Abilities. So the person who's asking the question believes that somebody on methadone or Suboxone is prevented from going deeper. I don't agree. I don't agree. I think when somebody, first of all, there are some people that are an opioid that you can detox pretty quickly. There are some people that you have to maintain for a long time on methadone or Suboxone, which is certainly a step forward from having to shoot heroin in the back alley. But I've never found that somebody on opioid replacement therapy is incapable of doing deep personal work. In fact, I see it as a real opportunity. The methadone visit or the Suboxone visit should not be just about urine tests, which I think are 100% useless. Because I'm not going to take somebody off. If somebody's on Suboxone or methadone and find a heroin or cocaine in the urine, I'm going to take them off there. Why would I? It's like saying that if you've got diabetes and you're on insulin, and you find sugar in your sugar cube in your pocket, I'm going to cut you off your insulin. What sense are we making? In any case, I think those opioid replacement visits are great opportunities to engage the person. Now that you're not having to seek, now that you're not having to jones around town looking for your next hit, how about we talk about what's going on for you? What started it all and how you're handling it? So I don't see it as a contradiction personally. There was another question about digital technology, which is highly addictive. Highly, highly addictive. It's addictive for a number of reasons. What drives it? What drives it is a sense of aloneness and loneliness and emptiness. You know, the automatic tendency to go online, to stay online. But there's something else. So I co-wrote a book called Hold On To Your Kids. This is about children, young people. The greatest need of young people, and this is pertinent to addiction as well. As I said, the most important dynamic in human life is attachment, which is the relationship with a caregiver or somebody that you're looking after. So children are wired for attachment. Children are absolutely wired for attachment. Their brains are wired for it. They can't help it. And the more immature you are, the more you need attachments. By definition. But there's nothing in the human brain that tells you who to attach to. There's no circuit in the brain that says you've got to attach to mom and dad. You're attached to mom and dad because that's who you see. You're attached to whoever's around. The duckling will attach to the mother duck, imprint on the mother duck, but if the mother duck is not there when he hatches, he'll attach to a dog or a horse or a mechanical toy. Because the brain is wired to attach, but nothing in the brain says, here's the person you're going to attach to. For the simple reason that attachments have to be transferable, because mom and dad may disappear or die. And if you only attach to them, you die. So attachments have to be transferable. It's in the nature of attachment of the immature brain, though, that it can't handle. Like if you're mature enough, you can handle not being with somebody, or not being in a relationship with somebody. To the extent that you can't handle that shows your immaturity. The lack of maturity, the lack of maturation of yourself as an independent person. Young children, infants, adolescents, no such capacity. They're not meant to have that capacity. Because we have this drive to attach, we'll attach to whatever's around. Now in our society, from an early age on, the adults are no longer around. Now here's a fact about human beings. Human evolution has been going on for something like 6 million years. If evolution began over there at that wall, and we get to our present time at that wall over there, then until this far away, 2 inches away from that wall, we were parented and grew up in small band hunter-gatherer groupings, where children were always around the adults, and not just their parents, but all kinds of adults. So that children had multiple adult attachments. That's how human beings were meant to be parented. This is how we evolved. So even the nuclear family is an aberration. But wherever children were, they were always around the adults. And again, the adults were multiple: grandparents, uncles, aunts, neighbors. I read a book about pygmies last summer. And pygmies are interesting because they're the largest group until about a few decades ago, and their habitat and therefore their ways of life and culture is rapidly being expunged and destroyed. But until recently, they were the largest group that survived in the same state that they lived in 10,000, 15,000 years ago. So we could actually look at ourselves as we were until this long ago. I'll read you a paragraph from this book called The Forest People, which is about living with the pygmies. The flames from the fires flickered... Sorry, that's not it. The pygmies have learned from the animals around them to doze with their eyes open, and a sleepy midday camp can become filled in a minute with shouts and yells and tearful protestations as some baby, crawling around this warm, friendly world, crawls into a bed of hot ashes or over a column of army ants. In a moment, he will be carried unceremoniously back to the safety of the hut. It does not matter which hut, because as far as the child is concerned, all adults are his parents or grandparents. They're all equally likely to slap him for doing wrong, or fondle and feed him with delicacies. He knows his real mother and father, of course, and has a special affinity for them, and they for him. But from an early age he learns that he's the child of them all, for they are all children of the forest. That's the natural state of human beings. Multiple adult attachments, absolute security. But because the immature brain can't handle what we call an attachment void, an absence of attachments, it has to fill it right away. Like the duckling will fill it with the toy, or the horse, which developmentally is a disaster, because the horse cannot lead that duckling up to adult duckhood. Now our children are the same. So when they're not with us at an early age, there's a void in their brains, which they have to fill with whoever's around. And in our culture, who's around for most of our kids most of the time? It's other kids. So our kids now transfer their attachments from us to other children. And they become peer attached. And therefore they become peer-oriented, which means that they get their orientation, a sense of direction, how to be, how to walk, how to talk, what's important, what isn't, what music to listen to, what to look like, from one another. And to get their validation from one another. Now, that leads to a desperate looking for attachments, because children cannot give each other unconditional loving acceptance. They can't do it, not because they're mean or bad, but because they're not mature enough to do that. And so that means that when they're with us, they're not comfortable anymore, because we're not the primary attachments anymore. So they always have to be with their peers. What have we done? We've created technology that allows them now to be seeking each other even when they're not physically together. So the Facebook and the tweeting and Instagramming and the emailing and cell phoning and whatever else that goes on, these are all attachment dynamics. They're not about the technology. They're about a desperation for attachment, which is the most important dynamic in human life. So what do you have on Facebook? You have friends. That's an attachment phrase. What do people do on Facebook? They like you. Except it's not satiating, and anything that's not satiating is addictive. The reason it's not satiating is because when somebody likes you, they don't like you, they don't even know you. They like the image that you've presented. And the more it is a substitute for the real thing, the less satisfying it is, the more addictive it becomes. That's a major reason. In this book, Hold On to Your Kids, the last 2 chapters are about the digital thing, and I'm telling you, if I was raising kids these days, I would not let them near a screen until they're 8 years old. I would not let them any screen whatsoever. I'd let them play with mud and sticks and toys and meet with me and so on. Screens also deplete dopamine receptors. The more you look at a screen, the fewer dopamine receptors you're going to have. They're highly addictive. So for a lot of people, then there's the porn addiction, the online porn addiction. What is porn all about? Well, sexuality is meant to happen in a relationship. By definition. But relationships are vulnerable. And people who are hurt, they don't want to feel their vulnerability. So now they want sexuality and intimacy without vulnerability. So now you got a porn addiction. You need that charge, but you're not going to mess with a human being, a real human being, because that's way too vulnerable. And now we have these digital tools that can feed people's porn addiction. So it's a terrible, terrible thing, this digital world. And for all, it's terrible not because it itself is terrible. Obviously, it has tremendous, not just potential, but tremendous gifts to offer even now, when it is employed by mature people for the right reasons. But give a lot of attachment hungry, emotionally empty, immature creatures that technology, it's going to be used for the wrong purposes. And it's going to become very, very addictive. All right, questions?
Over here.
Yeah, over
Here.
to the right. To the right, is that right? Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Dr. Mate.
Yeah.
Just go back to, or maybe talk a bit more about potential treatment. There are some substances, plants really, that aren't physiologically harmful, that have been shown to help with treating the underlying causes of addiction.
You're talking about plants, are you?
Sorry?
Plants, you said?
Plants, yes.
Okay, go ahead, yeah.
That have been shown to help with the underlying causes of addiction due to the way they interact with the mind.
Yeah.
Ironically, they're illegal, almost,
Naturally they are.
at least in this country and in Canada,
Yeah.
and most of the developed world. I wonder if you have, if you could speak to that, both in terms of, you don't necessarily have to speak to the politics of it, but to their
Sure.
potential efficacy.
All right, so,
how you feel about it.
So let me tell you something about an African plant, which is illegal in your country. It's said to have no valuable medical purpose whatsoever. You can't even study it. It's called iboga. Iboga is a root that grows in Gabon. It's been used for ceremonial purposes tribally for hundreds of years. Its extract, ibogaine, is a very powerful chemical. Give me an opiate addict who's been on heroin for 20 years, and this has to be done in a clinic setting where people really know what they're doing. But you give him ibogaine, he'll have no withdrawal in 24 hours. None. 5 days of ibogaine treatment, he's free of his opiate habit. Will you tell me anything that we have in the Western armamentarium that can come near doing that? It's illegal in your country. People that want to experience it have to go to Mexico to special clinics, and or there's a couple of clinics in Canada as well. It's called ibogaine, I-B-O-G-A-I-N-E. That's a plant. Now, is it a panacea? No, it isn't. Because a person comes off, does that mean that they'll stay off it? No, not unless they deal with all the stuff that made them addicted in the first place. So the work really begins, the work doesn't end with the ibogaine, it begins with it. But for some people, it also gives them visions and so on, deep into their own souls, into their own psyches. And I've seen miracles with it. I've literally seen miracles with it. There's another plant called ayahuasca, A-Y-A-H-U-S-C-A. It's become like a big thing. Even the New Yorker had an article about it back in September. I work with it. Ayahuasca is a plant that grows in the Amazon jungle, in Peru, in Ecuador, Colombia, and Brazil. And it doesn't have the physiological effects that ibogaine does, so it's not for opiate withdrawal. But it does give you powerful visions. Now, if you want to see a film about my work with ayahuasca, just go on YouTube and put in The Jungle Prescription, which is a documentary made by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation on my work with the plant and addictions. Now, what ayahuasca does, I lead retreats with it. And it's like 10 years of psychotherapy in 7 days. Because it's a psychedelic, and I don't know if you know what psychedelic means. Psychedelic really means manifesting or lighting up the mind. So it brings up material that's been repressed for a long time. So the kind of stuff that you have no access to. I've seen people heal from physical diseases. You wouldn't believe the stories, but I'm not even going to tell you right now. But it's not that the substance heals the person, it's that the person develops such self-awareness and self-knowledge that that's what's healing. It just changes them. In terms of addiction, It can reveal your deepest pain that you've been running from all your life. But imagine if you could experience your deepest pain that you experienced as a child, but now you're doing so with the consciousness of an adult in a supportive, nurturing context. You actually can learn that you can deal with that pain. You don't have to keep running. And what if in the process you also experience what my friend there called your essential self, your essence, all the love and the peace and the joy that's inside you. The plant can show you that as well. So I'm leading a retreat in a couple of weeks. I do it twice a year. And in Brazil, where the plant is not illegal, they use it in prisons to help prisoners. We don't know anything about it. So none of these are panaceas. You know, there are no panaceas. And I don't want to over-romanticize or exaggerate. But the transformative effects of these experiences are really profound for a lot of people, and that's why I continue to work with it. And so, whether it's for behavior addiction, it's sexual addiction, you know, eating, and so on, or just depression, anxiety, almost anything. Not to mention spiritual exploration. The plants can offer a lot, which is only to say that you know, and then right here in North America, you have, of course, the peyote experience. Very similar. And now who the hell are we, with our arrogant Western minds, who dismiss the traditions and practices and experience of indigenous people as if somehow we were experts? We have so much to learn. So that's what I would say in response to your question. And, you know, this is increasingly being recognized, a lot more literature about it these days, and a lot of people are interested, simply because the answers that we have are so limited. Now the problem, of course, is that these are expensive things to do, especially because they're illegality, but, you know, an ibogaine treatment would cost somebody in Vancouver $5,000 a week for that week. Now that's maybe not as much as you'd spend in a high-end addiction center, but at the same time, so many of the people that could most need it can't possibly afford it. Okay, other questions?
Alright, so that gets all of the original limbs redone and a little bit more limbiness added, and some really nice texture starting to develop on the main trunk as well. Let me zoom in. That globbiness along with the blue is starting to lend the whole thing a bit of atmospheric perspective between the limbs as well, and give the trunk some real rich texture.
Are you aware of any such models that are successful?
Alright, so that sets the stage for the next layer of foliage that will bring foliage into the foreground once again, and leave that for the back of the tree. So that's it for the moment. Thank you for watching. That's Adam Sturch broadcasting from the Mushroom Mansion, Taos, New Mexico, working on oil painting, oak tree, and a flower vase.
I'll speak to her, right? So first of all,
Have a good day.
you know, I mentioned